morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. There's a lot of positive energy and a lot of students here, and I think that's what makes today so exciting. The student voice is going to have a real presence today. There's a student panel later today. We heard Jake's earlier, with that wonderful, inspiring rap, and I'm really excited to really tell my story. It's about a year in the making, and it actually started with my friend Nikhil sitting out here in the audience. He's a student author. He's writing about education reform from a student's perspective. And so I was on Facebook actually about May last year, and I was involved in this movement started by the education reform documentary Race to Nowhere. It's about the high stakes testing culture, and I found Nikhil. Nikhil lives about 20 minutes away from me, and we connected because there aren't many like-minded people who are just as passionate about education reform who are still high school students. And we connected. Nikhil, was just in the early stages of writing his book. And I thought Nikhil would be one of the only people I'd find on social media, like-minded students. Turns out I was wrong. It wasn't just Nikhil. There were hundreds of students. And that was not just a community that was formed, instantaneously, but over the last year, there are Facebook groups with hundreds of students from throughout the country working together, discussing their thoughts on education reform, their experiences in education, and why they think education needs to be changed today. And so while we've connected, we've shared our stories. We don't all have the same schooling experiences. We don't have all the same administrations. I have a really, really supportive administration. And so I've been able to enact change, whether it be social media reform in my school. Also, we had a homework-free December break. And that was really, really great. But there are other kids out there who are not able to do the same things that I was able to do. But the important part, or the key to social media today, is its ability to empower people, its ability to enhance the student voice. We saw that with the Arab Spring recently, where young people in the Middle East were able to band together using social media and revolutionize the dynamics in the Middle East. And I think students are going to do that with the landscape in education today. Not only do I think they're going to do it, I know they're going to do it. There is a student Facebook group that I'd like to point out. It's called the Student Union. It was formed by Doris Svitak. She's a child prodigy. Some of you may know who she is. She's an author. She wrote a book when she was about 8 years old. Really impressive. And she brought hundreds of students together. And I joined that group, I'd say, about 3 or 4 months ago. And in the Facebook group, I discovered dialogues, conversations taking place. We talk about changing education is typically referred to as education reform. But I discovered people like Nikhil who don't believe that education just needs to be reformed. They believe it needs to be revolutionized. Education should not be a typical classroom structure where you're sitting in desks and you have to listen to the teacher, obeyed by the rules of the school. Nikhil really wants to break down those walls. And there are plenty of different beliefs out there that we're working together, we're discussing those beliefs. But the problem with the student voice today is the fact that there are so many student groups out there. So many. I mean, it's beyond belief from throughout the country. If you're in Columbus, Ohio, there's a group of students there waiting to figure out ways to empower the student voice and really change education. The same in New York City. There are tens of groups, or hundreds of groups with thousands of students who really want to change education. And so what we really need to do is unite the student voice. We need to make sure that not only is the student voice united, we need to empower the kids who don't feel like they actually have a voice. And that's what led to the formation of the Student Voice Chat on Twitter, inspired by EdChat. Education, after all, is all about the students, right? It's about how we learn and how we're going to be able to apply what we learn to our life following school. And so the Stu Voice Chat, it takes place at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Monday. Students come together. Other people who support the student voice, they come together And what we discuss ranges from the benefits of community college to how we translate the student voice into student action. And there are no leaders. There are no leaders. That's the key here. We don't want to look at the students as leaders. We want to look at them as organizers. I think leaders are a thing of the past. We need to look at organizers are people who understand their peers. Organizers are people who are able to put the cause before their title. And that's what we're finding here. There is no hierarchy. There are students who are all working together. That's definitely the key. And what I like to say here is that, what I like to talk about when it comes to education reform is that we can't focus on a national scale. We can't focus on changing things on a national scale. What we need to do is focus on creating change at a local level on a national scale. That's where the real change is going to take place. And that's where the student voice is really going to be empowered. And that is what led to the formation of stuvoice.org. Stuvoice.org was inspired by the Twitter chat. And what the website is doing is it's taking, for example, if I write a blog post for the Huffington Post, we're going to take that blog post and we're going to repost that on our website. If there are students in New York City who are protesting recent reforms that were implemented, we're going to take those videos and those news articles and we're going to repost them. And in addition to that, we're also generating new content. The website actually launched yesterday with thousands of views. Thousands of views. People are really, really excited about this movement. It's a student revolution, I think I'd call it. And it's a year, there was a recent Huffington Post blog post, and it talked about how this is the year of the youth. There are multitudes of movements that are starting, whether it be the formation of a presidential youth council to stuvoice.org. And what we're doing, so we're bringing together the students. We're giving them a forum to see how students are, taking action. We actually recently, right when we started the movement, we wrote a letter to Governor Cuomo in New York State. Recently, he formed a New York Education Reform Commission. And so what we thought was, there are no students here. I mean, isn't there something wrong with that? There's an Education Reform Commission without any students. It's kind of like a detective conducting a criminal investigation without interviewing the victims. And so we wrote the letter to Governor Cuomo, and a week later, we got a response. It was really surprising to get a response in 1 week. But the governor appointed himself the lobbyist for the students, so he has to listen to us. And so our response was, we're not going to be able to add any students to the Education Reform Commission because the maximum number of people allowed on the commission was already reached at 25. Go figure. But the students are going to receive priority to give testimony at every meeting. The students are also going to be able to meet with the commission members before and after every meeting if they desire. And most importantly, when the commission members submit their preliminary and final reports, the students, if they do not feel their voice was represented, are going to be able to submit their own report to the governor. And as I said, if the governor is really going to be the lobbyist for the students, he's going to listen to us. And so I gave testimony at last Thursday's meeting in the Bronx at CUNY Hostess. And afterwards, I went up to the Commissioner of Education, Mr. John King, and I said, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. And he said, I didn't agree with most of what you had to say, but thank you for coming. All I spoke about was making sure that the student voice became a permanent part of education policy. We have, there's the PTSA that was, there's a PTSA in my school. Parents, teachers, students, and administrators. And what the parents and administrators and teachers like to say is that there's a silent S there. And that's not because the students don't want to speak out. It's because they're not called upon to speak, to have a voice in their education. When students are called upon, the students have a lot to say. A lot to say. It's our education. We're the ones being educated. If the students don't feel like they're learning properly, or there are reforms that need to be taken to improve their education, the students are going to speak out. They're going to tell you what needs to be done. And that's the whole concept behind stuvoice.org. So what I want to encourage everyone to do is, the students need to speak out, but they also need to be encouraged to speak out. If you're a teacher, I really want to encourage you to, make sure that the students feel comfortable speaking out and saying, what they feel about a recent homework assignment or how they're learning in the classroom. I hear a lot of teachers, really progressive teachers, talking about how they want to use social media or the internet to reform education and really make it easier for students to learn. And the thing is, when you want to do that, you're trying to make it more convenient for us to learn. But the students really know what's convenient for them because they're the ones using the internet. They're the ones who are really trying to, the students are the ones who are learning. And if they aren't the ones who aren't asked for, if their opinion isn't asked for, then they kind of feel like no one cares about them. And that's when I bring up the self-fulfilling prophecy. I strongly believe that if we want to improve education today, we need to show students that we believe in them. We need to show teachers that we believe in them. We talk about this race to the top, but schools don't have comparable breakfast programs, schools don't have comparable libraries, schools don't have comparable athletic facilities. And if the schools don't have comparable resources, and teachers don't have comparable resources, and students don't have comparable resources, we're setting up our students and teachers to fail. It's like having two Olympic sprinters race from different starting positions. And the students realize that. They're talking about that on the Stu Voice chat. They're talking about that on Facebook. And we need to make sure that the conversation doesn't only take place on social media, that it translates to real life and it translates to education. It permeates the way teachers educate, and it really revolutionizes a generation. And so I want to encourage you to tweet out stuvoice.org, use the hashtag, check it out, see how you can support us. It's a movement by the students and for the students. But we can't do it without your support. The students are going to revolutionize education. As Diane Ravitch recently said, an education historian, when the student voice awakens, the national conversation will change. And I can tell you with full confidence that the student voice has awoken. So thank you for your time. I hope that you really make sure that you make it a priority to empower the student voice. And I really hope that you make it a priority to tweet it out to your fellow students. Tell the student audience what we're doing. Bring students together, because if you believe in 6 degrees of separation, we'll find those students who don't feel empowered, don't have like-minded students in their community. They'll see what other students are doing, and it's going to really change the national conversation. So thank you for your time.